Good afternoon, Mindsetters, and welcome to Mindset Learn Extra, where you learn more, learn extra. The show is proudly sponsored by Macmillan. And you tuned in this hour with myself, Tebogo Precious, and the lovely Miss Haley. How are you doing today?
Okay, you Tebogo.
Fantastic. Now,
Good.
we'll be handling mathematical literacy. And what topic are we discussing?
We're going to be doing some personal finance. I'm looking
Okay.
forward to it. So
Sounds
grade
very
10s to 12.
interesting.
You must be stay tuned.
Wow, well, let me send you off to a
Thank
board
you.
while you prepare a little, while I chat a little to our Mindsetters. Well, Mindsetters, don't forget, you can find us on facebook.com/learn extra or mindsetlearn/live. This is where you can post all your questions, where you can post all your queries, your comments. Let us know what you think about today's show. We'd love to hear from you. Even though you don't have questions of your own, you can just log on, like the page, browse a little, see if there's any question you can answer. Maybe you may have the perfect solution to somebody's question. facebook.com/learn extra or mindsetlearn/live. Are you ready?
I'm ready, Tebogo.
Fantastic. You can take it away.
Thank you. Hi, guys. Like I said, today we're going to be doing some business finance. Might be better if I've got a pen. Some business finance, and let's see what the lesson's all about. So, in this lesson, we're going to identify and perform calculations involving income and expenditure, because at the end of the day, your business is all about either something that you're selling or a service that you're providing. So you want to know how much you need to charge for something and how much money you're going to get in. So your expenses and your income, that's what a business is all about. We're going to identify and perform calculations involving profit and loss values. And hopefully your business will be making profits, but we're going to discuss both. And finally, we're going to discuss break-even point. So I think we've left out the break-even. So let's just add this. The break-even point and what that actually means. Hey, let's go through and discuss things. So, our key concepts for today. First of all, like I said, income and expenditure. In a business, you spend money and make money. That's what a business is all about. The aim is to make more money than you spend, so that the business can grow and that you can actually earn an income and pay your staff and everything else. It is essential to know, you need to know what costs are involved and whether you will have enough money to pay for these costs. You don't want to start a business and you decide, well, you're going to be selling cupcakes, and you haven't taken into account your ingredients or maybe your delivery and all these things, and you don't have enough money to pay for their expenses. So you need to know all these things before you set up a business. We call these costs all expenditures. Then, of course, income is the money that you make when you sell your product or service. It might be a service that you sell. You know, you might be mowing lawn in your neighborhood. That's a service. Profit is the difference between the expenditure and the income. In fact, profit is if your income is greater than your expenditure, then you make a profit. If it is less, you make a loss. And I think I'm going to discuss this in a few moments again. Cost of production consists of fixed expenses and variable expenses. So those are the things that you need to take into account. Let's quickly discuss each one. Fixed expenses are those costs which have to be met even when the business produces no goods. And these include rents and salaries. So if you're going to start off selling something at a flea market, you need to pay rent to the market to have that stall. That is a fixed cost. Normally a fixed cost doesn't change. So it's another kind of question in your mind. You can say to yourself, does this change from one month to the next? And if it doesn't, then you can actually say, well, then therefore it's a fixed cost. So think about that question. Variable expenses are the actual costs linked to producing the goods. So if I'm going to be producing a beaded bracelet, which we're going to be doing later in the show, how much are my beads costing me? How much does it actually cost me to make one bracelet? Now, these things change. Depends on how many I make. So that is a variable expense. They also, variable expenses increase as the number of units produced increased. So the more I'm going to make, the more it's going to cost me. Now, if I'm only going to make one bracelet, then it's going to cost me a certain amount. But if I'm making 100 bracelets, my cost goes up. The cost of producing 1 unit usually decreases as the number of units increase. Now, I'm going to go a little bit of space. What I mean is, if it costs me, say, 5 rand to produce 1 bracelet, as I make more and more bracelets, I can get my beads at a cheaper price. So I can actually reduce that cost to a lower and lower amount, and I can maybe get it for 4 rand, or even less than that. So the cost of producing 1 unit actually decreases as the number of units increase. And that's because I'm buying in bulk, so I can get a better deal on it. Hey, let's see what else we need to learn today. Our profit and loss. So, like I said to you, profit and loss is the difference between income and expenditure. A positive difference is a profit, and a negative difference is a loss. So if we look at our income, our profit, we can actually write it as our income minus our expense. And that's what I mean by a positive value. So if I have a positive value, it means my income is more, let's do it like that, is more than my profit, than my expense, not profit. Okay, let's take that off. Income is more than my expense. So here I make a profit, and if I get a negative value, it means that my income is lower than my expense, and this would be a loss. And that's definitely not where you want to be. But now bear in mind as well is that a business sometimes takes a while for it to actually start working. So you can't expect to go into business and have a huge profit in like the first few days that you're working. You need to work at this for a while, and like word of mouth and all these things work into the fact that you would have a profit in the end. So starting with a loss is not the end of the world. We usually look at a year's projection. I think today we're only going to be looking at a smaller time scale. Right, and what is a break-even point? Break-even is the point at which the income is equal to the expenditure. And this is the point where the business makes 0 profit and 0 loss. So it is the exact amount that you need to bring in, your income that you need to bring in, to cover all the costs. And that's probably a good place to be, don't you think, Twaha?
It is.
Start off business especially, okay, you want to kind of break even. Pay all your expenses. You don't want to have to take that money out of your bank account to start off with. All right, best thing to do is let's look at some examples and some questions. So starting off with this question, it's question 1. It comes out of Solutions for All, Maths Lit. It's the grade 11, topic 3, page 70, and question 2. That's such a mouthful. All right, let's read the question. So we've got Alana has monthly fixed expenses of 8,730. Those are her monthly expenses. Remember, that could be salary, it could be rent, or her fixed costs. Her variable costs to deliver a service is 93 Rand 16. That's the variable cost. And that is per service. So calculate the cost price per unit if she services 50 customers, and show all your calculations. So we have a fixed cost. So in actual fact, we could write this out as an equation, and very often they ask for an equation. So let's us create an equation. Get a different color, and let's create an equation. So her costs are actually going to be the fixed cost plus the variable cost per service times how much is it per service times the number of services or the number of units. So that's going to be her, that's her equation with no numbers in. Now let's see what we've got at the moment. So her cost is the fixed cost. And what was her fixed cost? It was 8,730 plus the variable cost, which in our case was 93 Rand 16, times how many customers were we dealing with? She was dealing with 50 customers, so times that by 50. And then we get our calculator out, and our calculator can do this for us. So we've got 8730 plus 93.16 times 50. It's 13388. Now, what I want to point out to you grade 10s and 11s out there, if you are only using a 4-function calculator, not the scientific calculator, please bear in mind that your calculator doesn't do the BODMAS that the scientific calculator does, and I'd rather you did it in 2 steps. So remember that you need to multiply first, so do that part on the calculator first, and then add your fixed cost. So this is something you need to do. You just need to practice, and by practicing with your calculator, you will become perfect. The other thing I want to just point out at the moment is, can you see at this point here, I did not have any units. I left out the rand sign because I find that sometimes it gets confusing and it gets cumbersome, and I prefer to do calculations with just plain numbers. But don't forget your unit in your answer. It is important that everything has a reference. So it is not just 13388, it is actually that amount of rands. Okay, let's see, and let's go back and answer the question. It says calculate the cost price per unit. Now, we never did the per unit part. We calculated her total cost. So what we still need to do here is we need to actually divide that by 50 because she had 50 units. So, and this is another reason. Remember earlier I said to you, your cost, your price per unit goes down, is that the more units I make, that fixed cost is being split amongst more numbers. So let's find that. I've already got my number there. Let's divide that by 50, and I get an answer of 267,76. 267,76, and that is per unit. Now, I went back and checked, got the correct answer. I've answered the question, so it's important that we go back and check our work. Let's see what it now says here. Let's calculate a selling price based on a percentage markup of 25%. Now, very often in business, we work on a percentage markup. So take my cost price and add to that a percentage, and then we round our answer up to the next 10 rand. So I'm going to take my cost price, and let's change our color. So I'm going to take my cost price of 267.76. I want to increase this by 25%, and if you've watched me on this show before, you will know that I like to multiply by 125%. I'm going to do it both ways, just to remind you. So increase by a percentage, you can include the 100 and the increase, and that's going to give us the answer. So on my calculator, I've already got that number. I'm just going to times by 125% and see that it's 33470. 33470. Remember, it's money, so it needs 2 decimal places. So before I carry on and go back to the markup, let's see if we do it in the steps like I know most of you are going to prefer to do. Right, times that by 25%. So I'm just going to show that to you. 267,76 times by 25%. Get an answer of 66.94. And then add it to my 267.76, which effectively is going to give me the same answer. So you can see why I prefer using the first method, just because it's actually quicker. Okay, it's the same answer. But now go back to my question, and the question says round your answer up to the nearest 10 rand. So I need to round to the nearest 10, and I'm rounding up, which means that this then becomes 340 rand. And you can put in your 2 zeros for your cents, and you can also leave them out. So it's important that we read the question, because that kind of question, rounding up to the nearest 10 is what's going to get you full marks, as opposed to like losing those some silly little marks that sometimes they lose. But you know what, Tebogo, I think maybe before I go onto the table and everything, maybe we should take a little bit of a break.
Yes.
Give them time to like stretch. And
Yeah.
I'm going to hand you over to Tebogo for a break.
Yes, it is now time for a quick break. Text a friend and remind them to tune in onto the show so they catch the lesson. We don't want them missing out. See you after the break. Welcome back, Mindsetters. If you just joined us, we're busy with maths, literacy, business, finance. I'm still anxiously waiting for your posts on facebook.com/learnextra or mindsetlearn/live. For now, let's commence with the lesson. Haley,
Thanks,
take it away.
Tebogo. Guys, I hope you had a good break. Okay, let's carry on with our question. So we've just calculated her cost of what she's going to sell things for. So that's going to be her income. Right, now it says, copy and complete the table. So we are going to do that, and I'm going to try it with purple, because I think the purple writing all right? Okay, so we've got number of customers, we've got our fixed expenses, variable expenses, total expenditure, income and profit. So starting off and then going across, we've got 0, 20, 30, 40, 50 and 60. Now I'm not going to do all the calculations, but I'm going to do some. So first of all, 0 customers is really, really important because they always give you a 0, whatever it is that we're selling. Her variable expenses, if she's got no customers, her expenses will be 0. So her total expenditures are actually 8,730. Her income, of course, is 0. So her profit now is her income minus expense. So we end up with a minus 8,730. So that is her cost for 0 customers. Let's do 20. Now, earlier, I'm going to change the color. Earlier, I told you that we had our variable expense was 93.16. So we said 20 times 93.16. Okay? So we're going to do that on the calculator. I'm going to get my piece of paper because I don't want to do all these calculations. Now let's do one. 20 times 93.16. And we get a fixed cost of 1863.20. 1863.20. So that is my variable expense. What's the total? I now need to add my 87. So on my calculator, I can just add my 8730, get an answer of 1059.20. Okay, I've actually got this here. It's 10593.20. Right, now what is her income? Her income is now based on another formula. So we have an income. Let's draw our formula. Her income is in fact how many customers and what is she charging. So we are dealing with 20 customers and we said she's charging 340 Rand. So on our calculator, all we do is say 20 times 340 and it's 6,800. So go back to my notes. Let's write in that answer. 6,800. Remember your Rand sign. And here I've got 68. No, that's not a 6. Let's try to delete this very carefully. 6800. So what is her profit? It is still a negative number. So let's do the calculation. We've got that. We're going to say minus my expenses, which was 10593.20. And we see that we are minus 3793.20. 3793.20. Right, and for each one of these, we need to carry on completing the table. Now, my fixed expenses doesn't change. So I'm at 8730, and I probably should have copied this across. my variable expense does change. So each one of these, I would actually do the calculations. 2794, 80. I don't think I need to do any more calculations for you. I think that you've got this fine. And I'm going to do 30. So her total expenses here is 11524.80. Her costs now, she's going to be earning more, is 10,200. And her loss is a little bit less, 2460. Right, let's do 40. I'm just going to complete the numbers for you, and then I think we've finished with that. No, that's not a 3. Right, get that pen out again. So 40 is 372640. Her total costs, you see her total costs are going up. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 40. But so then is her income. In fact, at this point, she is making a profit. At that point, she's making a profit. I'm going to put in the last two values and 608040. So let's put in a total expenditure. So we an income. Okay, we'll leave it at that. I think that you guys can actually follow and you can do this table. So we've completed the table, copy and complete the table. We've done that. Now I'm going to need this table for the next question. So let's move on to the next question. So the question then says, on the same set of labeled axes, draw the expenditure and income graph. So let me just take a picture of this and I'll have my camera out. Take a picture of this. Right, and then I've got that, and then I'm going to cut that there and move it there, and let's paste it, and there are my values. So now I've got this completed table. Let's just lock it in here, and I've got my completed table. So now on the same set of axes, draw a expenditure and income graph. So we need to draw a graph. No, where did that go? Okay, try that again. Draw a graph. I need a pen for that. We need to draw a graph on the same set of axes. So okay, let me leave that for there for a moment. What kind of graph? We want a straight line graph. And I tell my kids is always, we're looking at expense and income, so we're going to do those two graphs, one of expense and one of income. We're going to draw them on the same set of axes. And my kids will say to me, which goes on the x-axis and which goes on the y-axis? Or kind of which goes on this one and which goes on that one? Because sometimes they don't know the x's and y's. So let's set up a graph paper. So I'm going to actually, let's get a line and see if we can set up a line. I'm not even going to draw a very big graph. Okay, and draw a line across. So I've kind of got graph paper. Right, and then first number of customers, that is always X. So number of customers is always X. So on my X-axis, or this is the bottom one, we're going to start at 0, and I need to go up to 60. Now this is going to be kind of very rough. I need to go up to 60, so I'm going to make that about halfway. So we'll make that 30. That's about 60. Okay, and I'm going to split these. So there's 10, there's 20, and this is really a little bit rough. I think we've got a better graph coming up later in the show. Now I'm going up on the y-axis. What am I dealing with? I'm dealing with money. So I need to go my highest number, and for my income and expenses, I need to go up to about 25,000. I'm going to go up to 25,000, so we'll go up in thousands. So that needs to be 25,000. Okay, we're going to make that into 5, more or less. Okay, so 0, that's going to be 5,000, 10, 15, and 20. Now, of course, you guys are going to have either graph paper or you're going to have rulers, and you're going to do this very accurately. So, what is important is we are looking at the total expenditure. So it starts at 8730. Now that's a point where, let's get a different color. Let's get a green. Right, starting my expenses at 8.7. So I'm starting there. And it's important that for the 0 customers, you start at the fixed cost of 8,730. And then I'm going to go up to 60 was, look at my graph, 60 was, total expenditure was about 14,300. So I'm going to go to about 14,300. This is, like I say, very rough. And we can get a line and join these two together. Right, of course, you're going to plot at least 3 points. And these are straight lines. Why? It goes up in with a constant rate. My income, of course, let's do that in a different color, started at 0. Now I need a pen first. Started at 0, my income. And then I can look at any one of these. So let's go, 40 was 1360. 40 was 1360, about there. And I'm going to just join this graph. Let's see, with different color. Oh, well, I don't know if this blue will come out very well. Okay, and we join the dots. Right, so there's our graph. Now it says, approximately how many customers must she service for the business to break even? So, getting back my color pen, where's my break even? It's at that point, the point where the two graphs cross. And so what you're going to do is take a line from, you're going to draw a line, I'm looking for a different color, well, we'll use the yellow, draw the line down and see how many customers is that. And if we had done this correctly and accurately, it should have been about 37. And this is not exactly straight. So let's try redraw this graph. Okay. And because my lines weren't that accurate, so I'm going to tell you that the answer is about 37 customers. So that's the point where she's neither making a profit nor a loss. Let's move on to the next question. Right. And this question gives us the graph. So study the graph. Oh, wait, first of all, it comes out of the grade 11, topic 3, page 87, question 2. I think I need to change some color. So study the graph and answer the question. Now, whenever it says study the graph, that's exactly what I want you to do. I want you to study the graph. Look at the graph. So what kind of graph have we got? We got the expenditure and income graph for garden benches. We can see that there is, this is expense. Let's change color on this. Let's actually make one of them a different color. See if we can do that. Right, just makes it easier for you to see. That's our expenses, and the other one's our income. Right, question says, what does this business manufacture? Well, where do we get that information? What were we looking at? We were looking at garden benches. So clearly, they manufacture garden benches. So we've got garden benches. What is the cost of the fixed expenditure? Now remember, your fixed expenditure is when you've got no customers or no benches. So in this case, when we've got 0 benches, our fixed cost was 7,600 Rand. Oops, I'm going past that. 7,600 Rand. Easy, easy marks. Really just interpretation and standing marks in a test. Where on the graph do you find this information? Well, where on the graph do we find it? We find it at where there are no customers or no units, and it's actually on the y-axis. So you could write it in words, you could just say the y-axis, that's perfect. How many units must the business sell to break even? Provide a reason for your answer. So let's see, where's our break-even point? Our break-even point, let's get the green. Break-even point is at that point. Okay? We draw a line down. In fact, we can also see it on the graph there. That's 70 benches. So we draw a line graph, we see that 70. So what was the question? The break-even, it was 70 benches, and the reason? It's the point where the graphs cross. The graphs meet, or the graphs cross, or they intersect, and there's no profit or loss. What is the selling price per unit? Show your calculations. Now, when it comes to selling price, when you've been given a graph like this, what I'd like you to do is find a point where they intersect that's an easy point to calculate. So we can actually calculate at that point of 70 units because we know that value. So it's 24150 for 70. Otherwise, take it at any point. You know, you can go 20 up to your income. Just make sure that you do this accurately and across. So we can measure that. But let's take that value there. So we're going to take that value. So we know it's 24150. 24150. And that was for 70 units. So if we divide by 70, we will get our answer. So 24150 divided by 70 is 345. 345 Rand. And then calculate the income on 90 units. Well, now we take our value that we've got, 345, and times by 90. I think it's time for a bit of a break. So let me do this calculation quickly. It's 345 times by 90, and it's 31050. 31050. Was that an exact number? It was. Let's just check the last question before I send you on a break. Oh, the cost price, is that per unit? Calculate the cost of producing 90 units, and then calculate the profit. So let's do this quickly, and then you can go for a break. So we said the cost price was 236.43 times by 90, gives me my answer. And now I'm going to minus that from what I originally had. No, I'm not going to do that. Okay, let's try that again. 236.43 times by 90. Hey, you guys can do this on your own. That's 21,000. That's our cost. We've worked out our profit. One by the other will give us our profit. I want to move on to our next question when we come back after the break. But I am going to give you a break now. So, Tawako, you go.
Yes, it is now time for another short break to stretch your fingers a little bit. I know you've been taking notes, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. Don't forget to ask us anything you don't understand about the topic on facebook.com/learnextra or mindsetlearn/live. I'll be glad to help you and assist you and, cooperate with Haley here to assist you guys on Facebook. So I'm going to hand over to Haley now to commence with the lesson.
Thanks, Tawako. And guys, remember these notes are available on the website, and I know Tawako's given you the link, so go on to that Learn Extra, wonderful, wonderful site. I love going onto it. I love going and seeing, and you can see the videos of it, and it's fun, and I've told all my family, but just keep it a secret. I've told them all that I'm on YouTube, and they can go and watch. Okay, let's carry on with that lesson. I'm going to move on to question 4. I know I've left out question 3, but like I said, it's on the notes that are available on the website. So question 4 is our matric question. So this has been adapted from the NSC Eastern Cape, September 2012, paper 1, question 2. So Sivu buys beads wholesale and makes beaded jewelry and beaded traditional clothing, which she sells at the craft market. The following invoices show what she bought one day. So let's see what she bought in one day. So she went to Bead Paradise for all beads, strings, and material you'll ever need. She's got an invoice number. And remember last week we discussed all these things about how important numbers are. And that's the date that she bought her stuff. Then we've got a quantity, description, unit price, and the amount. So she bought 6 kilograms of glass beads at 56 Rand per kilogram. 100 clay beads at 1 Rand 80 each. 1 Rand 80 each. And they've done that calculation for us. So 100 times 180 is 180 Rand. And etc., etc. She bought all these things. She bought some strings. She bought 20 meters of linen, odds and ends for 48 Rand. Then we've got a subtotal, VAT, and total. The question is, use the table below to complete the amount column for the table above. So we're going to do this one step at a time. So our amount column is, what have we got? We've got 6 kilograms and she paid 56 Rand per kilogram. So for each one of these, we're going to add these up. So I'm going to get my calculator out. So that's 6 times 56 is 336. But lost that moment. Let's get rid of my camera. Is 336. Right. So 150 wooden beads at 1 Rand 85. So it's 150 times 1 Rand 85. And get our calculator out. 150 times 1.85 is 27750. Don't forget it's money. $175 brass beads at 2 Rand 50 each. So we're kind of doing this calculation over and over again with different values. But it's important that you get all the values correct. So 175 times 2 Rand 50 and 43750. Yeah, then they've given us the next one, 20 meters of linen, and it gives us 57 Rand per meter. So it's 20 times 57. This is not easy marks. 1140. And then finally, they've calculated the odds and ends have already calculated for us. And then what do they want? They want a subtotal. So I'm going to show you, we would take all of these and add each one of them. But I'm going to actually cheat a little bit, and I'm going to get my answer. And my subtotal is 2509. So that's if you add them all up. Now, when you're adding a row of columns like this, a row of numbers, quite a few numbers, I honestly suggest you add it up twice. If you get the same answer, that's perfect. If you get a different answer, then add a third time. So don't make a mistake with something like that. But what I would also show is I would actually show each one of these that I said 336 plus the next one plus. So you might be a method mark allocated for actually showing what you did. Okay. Then we need to work out our VAT. So total of our VAT. So let's work out VAT here. Okay. And let's change our color for a bit. So we've got 2509. And what is the VAT? VAT is 14%. So we take our calculator, where you would have had the number there, 2509, times by 14% to get the VAT value is 35126. And we add that number there, 35126. I have my rand sign. And finally then our total. So what would the total then be? Is we would take our 2509 and add the 35126. This is one case where my calculation of doing only one step doesn't work if they're asking you for the actual VAT number. So we can do that on the calculator. What happened to my rand sign there? Really did go a little haywire. So let's try to get rid of that. That was a 3. Let's go back to that calculation. That was a 3. And our total, if we add them, is 286026. And that was 10 marks in the exam. That was really, honestly, 10 easy marks. So that's the kind of questions you're going to expect in a paper 1. Right, let's see what we need now. Our calculator. Right, so next part of the question says she has a fixed cost of 375 Rand every month. Her other expenses are for the materials she uses to make her jewellery and the beaded traditional clothing. One month she decided to keep a record in the table form of all her expenses and sales of jewellery to see how her business was doing. So she kept a record. So this is the number of items sold and her expenses. So if she sold no items, of course she still got her fixed expense. That 375 is your fixed cost. If she sold 10 items, well, it goes up. You can see that. Her income, of course, goes up in a straight line. She's selling them. Well, we're going to come back to the question of how much she's selling for. Use the data from the table to draw a line graph showing Sivua's expenses and graph showing her income on the same set of axes. So we've got our axes set up in this case, so it will be a little bit more accurate. So let's see if we can put some values in. So we need to go from 0 to 3,000. That is on my expenses here. So I'm going to go, that's going to make that 0. And I need to go up to 3,000. So let's make that 1, 2, 3. No, those are not going very well where I want them on the line. Oops. Okay, they're not working. Okay, so I'm going to make that 500,000. Let's just do that. So that's going to be 1,000, 2,000, and 3,000. And it'll fit into our graph better. And we need to go up to 200 on the axis, so that's again 0, and 200. So let's make that 1, 2, 3, 4. Make that 50, 100. 150, I think that's right. 200, does that look right? 200, okay. And we should have now straight lines. Now, use values that they've been given to you, and 3 points are enough to plot this graph. So what is important is that when we do our expenses, we start at 3,750. So, I'm going to get a color, let's do yellow. 3,750, so there's my 500, 3,750 is about there. Okay? And then I get the next value I'm going to plot is, say, 100 at 875. So 100, why did I write it as 1,000? 100 at 875. So I find 875 is about there. And of course then we're going to do 200, 1,375. So 1,375. Okay, I'm going to draw in the lines, the yellow line. I hope you can see the yellow now. And we're going to join these graphs. Okay, so of course my lines aren't totally accurate, but you're going to have rulers, and you're going to do this all perfectly. My expenses, on the other hand, go straight up. 150 at 10, and let's go 1,500 at 100. So let's do that. So 100 to 1,500, which is about there. We started at 0, and 200 was 3,000. About there. And let's see if we can join this. I don't have the green line. I hope you'll be able to see the green line. Going to join those 3 dots, more or less. And I'm going to carry on the graph. Now, don't forget to label your axes. So let's label these. This was our income, and that was the expense. As normally they actually give you a mark allocation for labeling. This makes it easier to see. Right, we've drawn our graph. Let's move on to the next part of the question. Using your graph, work out how much she must sell to break even. So how much must she sell to break even? So my graph is not the most accurate of graphs. It's a little bit small. I would have preferred a bigger graph. But where's our break-even points? I'm actually going to take my graph that I have here. Her break-even point is this point over here. So what does she need to sell? She needs to sell, in fact, it is quite accurate. She needs to sell about 40 values, about 35, 40 units to break even. So the number of items that she needs is about, I'm going to go with this graph, is 38. Whoops, where did we go here? So from the graph, and I want you to show on the graph. So from the graph, you're actually going to say, from graph, it's actually, it was about 40. So let's say about 40. Right, and then calculate how much profit she made this month if she told 200 items. Well, that was quite easy, because in actual fact, if we go back to our table, if she sold 200 units, we've got her expenses and we've got her income. So let's get our calculator out. We can rewrite it in a moment. Move my calculator over. Right, her income was 3,000. Her expenses was 1,375. and check your calculator that you don't do something like I did and just enter extra numbers. And we see that it's 1625. So if she sells 200, that's her profit. Let's go to the next page and write that. So her profit was her income, which was 3,000, minus her expense, and I can't remember what that was. It was 1375. And her profit, and this you also could read off the graph. Her profit was 1625. How would we read this off the graph? Let's just go back to the graph for a second and see, well, okay, how would we read this off the graph? We would say 200, what is my value here? Let's try to see if I can do this in blue. My value here, that's my my income, and my value here is my expense. It won't be quite as accurate as doing the calculations from the table, but perfectly capable of doing it from the graph. But just be careful, like if you've drawn the graph and they've given you the values in the table, rather use the table. But very often they ask you to draw the graph and then do calculations from the graph. Then you need to use the graph. So read the question carefully and see what are they actually asking. So let's go see what the next part of the question is. With the use of some of the graph, find out how many items she must sell to have an income of 1,800 Rand for the month. Now this tells you to do it from the graph. So go back to our graph. And we want 1,800. So I'm going to see if I can get a color. We'll use yellow. 1,800 is about there. I'm going to draw a line across. It is my income that I want. How many must I sell? And there's the amount. So I'm going to read that value off there. So in this case, you can also check to see that you actually have the correct calculations. Now, what I want to do in order to check this is how much is she selling one item for? Because that hasn't come up yet. And the question is, well, number of units sold. Well, she sold 10 units at 150 was her income. So clearly she is selling each item, so it's 150 for 10. When divided by 10, she's selling each one for 15 Rand. That's what she's selling one item for. So now the question, going back to this question, let's see what our graph says. Our graph said about, I'm going to go with about there's 150. So that's about 130 that she needs to sell. So let's answer that question here. To make 1,800, graph, find out how much she must sell to have an income of 1,800. We said about, no, that's not rands. From the graph, we can see that it is about 130 units. And let's do our calculation. Now we've worked out, it was 15 Rand each. So if we take 1,800, divide by 15, we get 120. You see how close we were? And my graph is totally inaccurate. So this is a nice way to check that we're actually on the correct place. Now, we've got a difference of about 10 Rand, or 10 units, 10 units. It's important for you to remember that when you're dealing with a graph, and it's your graph, okay, there is quite a bit of leeway that the examiners will give you on either side. So they kind of, I think in this case, would probably have said anything from about 110 to 130, and we would have been fine. And remember, my graph's not that accurate because it's really hard to get accurate on this board because I've got this calibration and things. Hey, let's see. Last question, I think. With the use of the graph, find out what Sifuya's total expenses will be if she makes 180 items. So with the use of the graph, if she makes 180 items. So let's go back to our graph. And 180 items. I'm going to try this in green. 180 items is about there. Draw up to the graph and across from the graph. Okay. And we see that her expenses, we've actually gone to the wrong graph. Let's undo that. We want her expenses. So 180 up to the graph, the expenses graph, and across on the expenses graph, and we see that it's about 1,250, give or take a little bit. Okay? And again, we could go back and check, well, what happened? What were her expenses for each additional one? And try and work it out like that. And we know that it's somewhere between those two numbers. I think I'm going to leave this question here, and I want to tell you guys a few things. Always, always, always read the question and reread the question. You know, that's important. And practice, and especially practice using your calculator. I can't stress this enough to these kids. Just use your calculator. On that note, I'm going to say goodbye. I'm sure Taboka's got stuff that she needs to tell you, and I'll see you probably next week. So keep on practicing.
Unfortunately, it is time. It is the end of our show. And thank you so much, Hayley, for the wonderful lesson. It sucks, hey? Time flies when you're having fun.
It does, it does.
Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. Thank you for inviting Team Mindset to your home. Thank you to Macmillan, our proud sponsors. We really appreciate it. Bye, guys.